Prince Harry's stalker story to cancel out Meghan Markle's, well, stalker story, because it certainly didn't work. No, this is not a top sheet. It's called fashion.
Paris Fashion Week was supposed to be Meghan Markle's big re-entry into the world that once adored her. After years of headlines about her exit from the royal family, the failed Spotify deal, and that endless Netflix chatter, this was meant to be her moment of redemption, her glamorous comeback to high society. Balenciaga had rolled out the black carpet, the cameras were waiting, and the guest list was stacked with the kind of names Meghan has always wanted to be surrounded by: Anne Hathaway, Baz Luhrmann, Dame Kristin Scott-Thomas, all icons in their own right, the type of people whose presence screams influence without needing to shout it. Meghan thought she'd blend right in. She didn't realize she was walking straight into one of the most quietly humiliating moments of her public life. The footage begins like something out of a carefully choreographed PR fantasy. Meghan gliding into the venue, shoulders squared, smile perfectly set, every gesture rehearsed to say, "I belong here." Her hair sleek, her outfit minimalist, her posture radiating self-control. It was a visual reminder that she hadn't lost her touch for spectacle. The cameras flashed, and for a moment you could see it on her face. She believed she was back in her element, but that illusion didn't last long. Because when she turned toward Dame Kristin Scott-Thomas, one of Britain's most respected actresses, and a woman with an effortless air of class, something subtle but brutal unfolded. Meghan smiled, perhaps expecting a polite greeting or a nod of acknowledgement. Instead, Kristin didn't even glance in her direction. Not a look, not a whisper, not a single flicker of recognition. What makes this moment so fascinating is how understated it was. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet, controlled, the kind of rejection that only someone truly comfortable in their own power could deliver. Kristin's body language spoke volumes. She slightly adjusted her stance, repositioning herself away from Meghan's orbit, as if to create an invisible wall between them. Meghan's smile faltered for just a second, her trademark hand-to-chest gesture appearing, the same move she's used countless times in interviews to feign humility or surprise. But this time, it didn't land, because no one was watching. The social gravity in that room didn't pull toward her anymore, it moved around her. Social media caught on within minutes. Clips of the encounter spread across Twitter and TikTok like wildfire. Users dissected every frame, zooming in on Meghan's expression as the realization hit her. One fan wrote, "Dame Kristin didn't just ignore her, she erased her." Another joked that Meghan had become the human buffering screen. People couldn't get enough of the contrast between Meghan's performative energy and Kristin's regal restraint. The comments were ruthless but not surprising. Meghan's attempt to rebrand herself as a Hollywood meets royalty hybrid had been faltering for a while, but this moment put it under a microscope. Viewers didn't just see a woman being ignored, they saw a former duchess struggling to find relevance in a world that had moved on. The irony is that Meghan built her image around being seen. Every move since she left the royal family has been about visibility, interviews, documentaries, podcasting, public appearances. But in that Balenciaga crowd, surrounded by people who carry legacy without social media validation, she was invisible. The silence from Dame Kristin wasn't personal, it was symbolic. It was a quiet reminder that true prestige doesn't demand attention, it attracts it naturally. Kristin didn't need to perform warmth. She simply existed in her space, dignified, untouchable. And that's exactly why it hurt Meghan so much. Behind Meghan's practiced composure, you could almost see the internal spin. How do you recover from a snub like that when every camera in the room caught it? She tried to laugh, to redirect her gaze, to act unbothered, but it was too late. Her body language told the story her PR team couldn't rewrite. The stiffness in her jaw, the brief clench before she turned away, the way her eyes darted across the room looking for someone, anyone to anchor to. Even Baz Luhrmann, who had greeted her earlier, had melted back into the crowd. The moment was done. By the next morning, the clip had been viewed millions of times. Fashion commentators on YouTube called it a masterclass in aristocratic shade. Celebrity pages called it the snub heard around Paris. And royal watchers had a field day, framing it as poetic justice. After years of Meghan lecturing the British establishment about kindness and inclusion, here she was, being excluded in the most elegant way possible. For her critics, it was proof that Hollywood and high society never truly embraced her the way she imagined they would. For her supporters, it was painful to watch. Another example of Meghan trying to fit into a world that keeps pushing her out. What's important to understand is that Dame Kristin isn't just any actress. She's a British cultural icon, connected to the kind of social circles Meghan once dreamed of joining through marriage. Kristin has dined with royals, worked alongside aristocrats, and never once needed to leverage it for attention. Her reputation is built on grace, not gossip. That's what makes this so cutting. The snub wasn't just about Meghan, it was about what she represents. A woman who's tried to turn fame into legitimacy, influence into credibility, and the fashion elite saw right through it. As Meghan's PR team scrambled to spin the story, headlines tried to soften the blow. Some outlets framed it as an innocent misunderstanding. Others suggested Kristin didn't see her, but the public wasn't buying it. The clip's clarity left little room for interpretation. It wasn't a missed glance, it was a deliberate absence of acknowledgement. The internet thrives on moments like this, where power dynamics play out wordlessly. And this time, Meghan wasn't holding the power. She was on the receiving end of it. Her reaction afterwards said it all. Insiders claimed she was deeply embarrassed and taken aback by how cold the reception felt. But even in embarrassment, Meghan has a way of masking vulnerability with messaging. When she eventually addressed it indirectly through friends and sources, the tone was familiar, measured, dignified, and self-protective. Words like grace, kindness, and women supporting women were floated around as if to reframe the incident as a lesson in empathy rather than an exposure of social hierarchy. It was classic Meghan damage control. Shift the narrative, emphasize emotion, and remind everyone she's misunderstood, but the damage was done. For an audience that thrives on authenticity, the encounter highlighted what's always been Meghan's biggest struggle, her inability to read the room. In her world, visibility equals value, but in true high society, value is quiet. It doesn't chase cameras or hashtags, it commands respect through stillness. Kristin Scott Thomas didn't need to insult Meghan to make a statement. Her silence did it for her. And that's the kind of blow Meghan's carefully constructed confidence wasn't built to withstand. As Fashion Week rolled on, Meghan faded further into the background. Other stars stole the spotlight, the Balenciaga show continued, and the internet moved on to new memes. But for Meghan, that moment lingered, because what she experienced wasn't just a snub, it was a mirror, a reflection of where she stands now in the eyes of the elite she's always wanted to impress. For years, she's tried to prove she belongs among the tastemakers, the aristocrats, the icons. But in Paris, surrounded by them, she became what she's always feared most, irrelevant. Still, in true Meghan fashion, she won't let this moment be her final act. If history's any guide, she'll turn it into something. A speech about women's empowerment, a new project about grace under pressure, maybe even a subtle Vogue essay about overcoming judgment. She's a master at reshaping criticism into content, but no matter how she spins it, the image of her being quietly ignored will stay etched in pop culture memory. Because it wasn't just another awkward encounter, it was a public reminder that no amount of PR polish can disguise desperation for validation. The Balenciaga show was supposed to remind the world of Meghan Markle's influence. Instead, it reminded the world of her limits. While Dame Kristin glided through the evening untouched by drama, Meghan left the room in tears, emotionally, if not literally, facing the reality that the social world she once dreamed of conquering has closed its doors. And that's what makes this moment sting so deeply. It wasn't rejection from strangers, it was rejection from the exact world she fought to be part of. In the end, Paris Fashion Week gave us more than clothes and glamour. It gave us a glimpse into the fragile ecosystem of fame, class, and perception. Meghan's attempt to reclaim her place among the fashion elite turned into a modern-day lesson in humility, because while she tried to make herself visible, Dame Kristin reminded everyone that real class doesn't need an audience. And sometimes, the loudest humiliation comes from absolute silence. In the days that followed, the silence surrounding Meghan's Paris Fashion Week appearance grew louder than the event itself. What started as a quick viral moment began to transform into a full-blown discussion about status, respect, and authenticity. People weren't just talking about a celebrity being ignored, they were talking about the symbolism of that snub. In a world obsessed with influence, Meghan had just been reminded that real influence isn't something you can demand. It's something you earn and keep by knowing when to stop reaching. Fashion insiders began leaking subtle whispers that didn't help Meghan's case. A stylist who attended the event hinted that Meghan's team had been overly involved, trying to choreograph her seating and red carpet timing to maximize camera exposure. Another guest claimed she arrived a bit too eager, circling the room as if waiting for acknowledgement that never came. Whether those stories were true or exaggerated didn't matter. What mattered was how easily people believed them. Because at this stage, Meghan's reputation had become her greatest liability. The perception of desperation followed her everywhere, and this event only confirmed it. Meanwhile, Dame Kristin Scott Thomas carried on as though nothing had happened. She didn't comment, didn't post, didn't even acknowledge the buzz online. That in itself was a statement. Her quiet indifference only deepened the contrast between the two women. Kristin didn't need to defend herself because she hadn't done anything wrong. In her world, ignoring noise is the most elegant response possible, and that poise made Meghan's overexposure look even more glaring. For Meghan, who built her brand around being outspoken, silence has always been her biggest enemy. Ever since the Oprah interview, her power has come from talking, from controlling the narrative, shaping perceptions, and addressing every perceived slight. But Paris Fashion Week reminded everyone that when the world stops listening, her words lose their power. The awkwardness of that Balenciaga moment wasn't just about Dame Kristin, it was about Meghan confronting the new reality that not everyone finds her story captivating anymore. And it's not like the timing helped. The appearance came right as her public image was already wobbling. Her podcast had been canceled, her Netflix output had slowed, and Hollywood insiders were reportedly tiring of her. Public sympathy that once seemed endless was fading fast. What had once been viewed as bravery and resilience now looked more like self-promotion and self-pity. And so when she walked into Paris Fashion Week, she wasn't seen as an icon returning to form. She was seen as a brand trying to reignite itself. Social media can be cruel, but it's also revealing. One viral tweet summed it up perfectly. Dame Kristin ignored Meghan, and in that moment, every influencer pretending to be royalty felt seen. That single sentence captured the generational divide between earned class and curated fame. Kristin's silence became the internet's shorthand for dignity. Meghan's attempts to belong became a meme. The internet isn't kind to those who try too hard, and Meghan's every movement, every strained smile, every forced interaction became fuel for mockery. Behind the scenes, you can almost imagine the damage control meetings, advisors debating how to reframe it, how to make Meghan's pain look purposeful. Someone probably suggested a line about women supporting women, or the importance of kindness even when others aren't kind. It's the same playbook she's used for years, but even that strategy has lost its shine. Because at this point, audiences can sense when something is real and when it's a PR exercise, and that's where Meghan keeps stumbling. She's performing authenticity instead of living it. Still, there's a part of Meghan that likely refuses to see the Paris moment as defeat. She's always viewed herself as misunderstood, as someone destined to rewrite the narrative after every setback. So maybe in her mind, this wasn't humiliation, it was transformation, a moment to rise again. And that's what makes her such a fascinating figure. No matter how many times the spotlight burns her, she keeps stepping back into it. But the question now is, does anyone still care enough to watch? Meanwhile, Dame Kristin's stature only grew. Fashion commentators praised her British restraint, calling her behavior a masterclass in quiet confidence. A viral TikTok sound remixing Meghan's awkward smile with a dramatic voiceover titled "The Snub" racked up millions of views. It became one of those rare cultural moments where everyone from royal watchers to casual fashion fans felt united in secondhand embarrassment. People weren't cruel for cruelty's sake. They were reacting to something deeper. They were reacting to the feeling that they were watching a story they'd seen play out before. A woman who thought she could reinvent herself through visibility, but discovered that reputation can't always be rebranded. There's also the cultural angle that makes this moment so potent. Paris Fashion Week isn't just about clothes, it's about social codes. It's about who stands where, who acknowledges whom, who gets whispered to, and who's politely ignored. It's a game of invisible hierarchies, and Meghan, despite her best efforts, has never mastered that game. In America, she can build her brand through openness and emotion. But in Europe, especially in circles where decorum still matters, overexposure is social death. And that's exactly what Dame Kristin embodied. She didn't have to snub Meghan, she just had to exist as herself. And that was enough to make Meghan look out of place. People close to Meghan insist she left the event early, visibly shaken, and retreated to her hotel suite. One insider allegedly described her mood as disappointed but composed, saying she felt let down by the lack of warmth from certain attendees. That kind of language says it all. It's polished, careful, and deeply revealing. Because even in private moments, Meghan seems to process rejection through public narrative. It's never just "I was ignored." It's "they weren't kind." That difference is subtle but crucial. It's what separates how the world sees her from how she sees herself. Even her defenders couldn't fully spin this one. Royal commentators who usually back her admitted that the clip looked bad. Some tried to argue that it was selective editing, but the raw footage was too clear. Meghan's forced smile and quick glance away told the whole story. It wasn't malicious, but it was undeniably awkward. And the fact that it happened at Balenciaga, a brand synonymous with exclusivity and mystery, made it sting even more. You can't fake belonging in a place built entirely on perception. What makes this all the more tragic is how avoidable it was. If Meghan had walked in quietly, mingled naturally, and kept her composure, the headlines might have read, "Meghan Markle stuns at Paris Fashion Week." Instead, because she seemed so visibly eager to connect, it flipped. It became, "Meghan Markle gets ignored at Paris Fashion Week." The same cameras that once built her image are now the ones dismantling it frame by frame. But beyond the gossip, there's a bigger question here. Why does Meghan keep chasing spaces that reject her? For all her talk about independence and building her own path, she still gravitates toward institutions of validation. Whether it's Hollywood, the royals, or the fashion elite, she keeps trying to win their approval. And every time she's denied, she looks more desperate for it. That's the tragedy behind the glitz. It's not just that she was ignored, it's that she needed not to be. There's a reason this story resonated so deeply online. It wasn't about fashion, it was about human nature. Everyone's had that moment of being left out, of smiling through discomfort, of pretending not to notice rejection. Meghan's reaction was painfully relatable, even if the setting was far more glamorous than most of us will ever experience. For a brief moment, she wasn't a duchess or a celebrity. She was just someone trying to hold it together while the room pretended she didn't exist. But relatability only goes so far when the public no longer roots for you. And that's Meghan's uphill battle now. The empathy that once shielded her has thinned out. Where people used to see a woman unfairly treated, they now see someone who keeps stepping into the same traps. The Paris moment didn't create that perception, it confirmed it. And yet, if there's one thing Meghan's story has proven, it's that she's resilient. Whether it's a headline, a public snub, or a social media storm, she always finds a way to turn the page. So it wouldn't be surprising if months from now we see a glossy magazine spread, something about finding peace in the noise, or redefining grace in the modern world. The same cameras that caught her embarrassment will one day catch her comeback. But what she may never fully regain is authenticity. Because when the world watches you perform sincerity too many times, it stops believing you mean it. For now, though, the image of that moment lingers. Meghan standing alone amid the glittering crowd, her practiced smile fading as the people she hoped to impress turned away. In an age where everything is documented, it's hard to escape a single frame that tells 1,000 stories. That clip, just a few seconds long, captured the fragile truth behind her brand. The woman who wanted to be seen by everyone was for the first time seen by no one. And in that silence, amid the flashing lights of Paris, Meghan Markle faced something far more cutting than gossip or criticism. She faced indifference. Because scandal still keeps you relevant. But being ignored, that's the true death of celebrity. And for Meghan, that realization must have hurt more than any headline ever could. Her next move will be crucial. She can either retreat further into defensiveness or embrace humility and reinvention. If she's smart, she'll take a step back, reevaluate, and remember what made people care about her in the first place: authenticity, not ambition. But if history repeats itself, she'll likely do what she's always done: talk about it. Maybe not directly, but through symbolism, interviews, or a carefully worded reflection. Whatever happens next, the Paris Fashion Week snub will remain a defining chapter. Not because of what Dame Kristin did, but because of what it revealed, how fragile Meghan's standing in the world of influence truly is. And maybe, just maybe, that's the moment Meghan needed most. Not another applause, not another spotlight, but a pause. A chance to realize that sometimes, power isn't in being seen, it's in being still. But whether she learns from it or tries to spin it, one thing's certain, that Balenciaga night will follow her forever. The cameras may have moved on, but the world won't forget the look on her face when it finally hit her. Paris didn't care.